Welcome to my podcast, The Funky Tracks. This is episode number 5, and the concept is quite simple. We're here at my table where I have my dinner, and I invite a guest. We talk about music, about the sickest parts and the most interesting bullshit. And today, my special guest is Frank, aka ID, aka 50% of the Outside Agency, aka 50% of Ghost in the Machine, aka 50% of The Silence, aka... How much more do you have?
I used to do electro house as Cherry Cocaine.
Cherry Cocaine?
Yes.
100%?
100% me, yeah.
100%.
Only ever did one track as that, under that name, but it is there. I also used to make grindcore on the Commodore 64 together with a friend.
Yeah.
But that's let's not go there.
Yeah.
It was really fun though.
Yeah. Hi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. For those of you who know what Discogs is, you can find it all there.
Yeah. Just look at the whole list of names on there. So, how long have you actually been making music?
I used to always mess around with tape decks. My dad, before he left me and my mom all alone in the winter cold, he left a bunch of musical instruments in the attic. So I was always trying to do something. I'm not necessarily very musical, but I'm very percussive.
Yeah.
And I was always really into reggae and hip hop. That was my main thing. And I discovered that if I hit the pause button on my tape deck just a little bit, that it would just slightly mess with the speed of the tape, and I could make little sounds with this. And I had my Commodore 64 that could make really rudimentary tracker stuff, but it was never really music, but I loved messing around with things. Then in 1990, I went to visit my dad in America, and I walked into his house and he had a sampling keyboard. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, you like that? Here's a computer with nothing on it. Here's 3 floppies with MS-DOS 3.3 on it. Here's a manual for the computer, MS-DOS, and the sampler. Good luck. This is a MIDI cable.
Yeah. And you just went and played
for
with
a
it.
nerd?
Yeah.
For a nerd, this is fantastic. And then when I sampled my own voice and was able to go...
Hell yeah.
I can manipulate things. This is great. So this was around 1990. I messed around until about 92, and then mutual friends of both me and Noel, my partner in the Outside Agency, introduced us. Said, "Hey, you guys are both weird. You both make hardcore. You should do this together." And that's when we started sending out demo tapes together.
Yeah.
And from around maybe 93. And around 1996, when we were just about to give up, we started getting phone calls from labels.
Really?
Like, hey, let's do something. So making music seriously, maybe from like 92, 93.
Yeah, but it got picked up from 96, you
Yeah.
would say. So, and you almost gave up?
We almost gave up because no one ever responded to anything.
Yeah.
We used to send cassettes out.
Yeah, sick.
And I've seen, I used to visit the Mokum office quite regularly.
Yeah.
And Fred, he had a box this big with the month's demos. Like everybody was making music, everybody was sending tapes. So it was just, okay, let's listen to this one today.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but it was a track, The Underground by X Factor. That was our alias before the Outside Agency. Everybody wanted that one. So Rotterdam Records, Rave Records, XSV, everyone called and said, hey, can we have that? And we said no, because it's already out.
Yeah.
Or it's about to be out. And then Mokum called and he's like, oh, that's a shame. Can you make me some new ones?
Yeah.
He was the only one that asked.
Yeah.
Out of the 5 or 6 labels that called, Mokum was the only label that said, make me 4 new ones then.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's how it got started. Yeah. I definitely remember also starting out and sending out demos, and I I will never forget because it was DJ Luna who first responded to me. I mean, he is like a DJ and less of a producer, so he is looking always more for tracks, I can imagine. And he really encouraged me in that sense, like, one of the guys is responding. And then finally it was actually Zatox who first was like, from a demo of mine, yeah, we're gonna release this. And then I heard nothing about it for a long time. And then it got released, my original got released as a remix somewhere on an Italian label, and it was all very strange. But it had to start somewhere.
Yeah, how much frustration and anger is there in the initial demo phase? Because now you can learn to make music. If you have the talent, you can get there quite quickly.
Yeah.
If you have the latent gift. But back then, you really needed to, can I please borrow a reverb unit from you?
Yeah.
Can I record in your studio? Can we please get it together to do something? And then you start sending out demos, you get rejected, and you think, okay, it makes sense that I'm just starting out. But after 2 years, you're like, hey, I'm hearing music that's not as good as mine.
Yeah.
Get released.
Yeah.
What gives?
There's something else to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a right place, right time. We were really far away from the two centers of hardcore in this country.
Yeah.
So it's not like we would run into people in record stores all the time that could give us pointers.
Yeah.
But it's maybe also why my music is a little weirder.
Yeah.
Than other people.
It's that Goes X Factor.
That isolated existence.
So what have you brought for us today?
So when people ask me to prepare music that I like or am inspired by, or look up to, or made me go, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah.
That's a really long list. It doesn't even fit on the wide lens. That is quite something. So I used to be really. My neighbor used to play a lot of. My neighbor was an early Parkzicht visitor. He's a few years older than I was, and he used to play music that I really didn't like. Lots of bleeps.
Yeah.
But in the early '90s, when people started using choir sounds as stabs, I was like, hey, this is cool, actually.
Epic.
I can dig this. I understand this. So I brought one of the tracks that one of the first tracks I heard. It was a big radio hit. Let's play it.
Yes, please.
So they used to play this on the radio. This was a huge hit, and then the heirs of the original composer of the piece protested the use of the sample.
Wow.
So it was removed from all shops, but it was announced that it was going to be removed from all the shops, so everyone went to buy it. It became a huge hit. That's the one.
Oh.
So much good stuff from Belgium back then.
Yeah, definitely.
There's a woo!
Man. I also know so many hardstyle tracks that have copied this.
Yeah, quite a good. It has a really good kick. Like these are all really seasoned producers that were like, oh, it's not EBM anymore. It's something else now. Let's see if we can make that too.
Yeah.
So they had a big head start in production. I'll fade it out. It's a really long track. But yeah, then this too. We had a friend of ours that was in the Beats Up Your Feets crew, one of the drum and bass outfit that we used to do events as. He was really into jungle. So we would go to his house to record music because he had a mixer.
Yeah.
I had an effects unit. He had a mixer. He had a DAT recorder, so we could go there and record things. And he challenged me and Noel both to try to make jungle. But what I really didn't like of it, I liked some aspects of jungle. I liked old rave stuff that would use, again, the same choir stabs.
Yeah.
It's going to be a choir stab journey today.
100%.
Then the No U-Turn label became successful, which was really stripped down, minimal, very icy version of what jungle was.
Yeah.
Which became Tech Step. And that would be my next track to play.
Okay. Go ahead.
So these guys, apparently, would just sit in a really hot studio in the attic of this guy Nico's room.
Yeah.
Stab. When these guys started using stabs, I was like, hey, something's going on here. But there's something else in this track that really shaped me. They would sample Blade Runner.
Yeah.
The whole, almost everything in their catalog is named after Blade Runner characters or scenes or events or the soundtrack, and they sampled the hell out of it.
Yeah.
Can we fast forward on this show?
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to.
No rules. Hey, magic. That's a sexy one.
These guys were the first to do that. They would take the bass line from Kevin Reese Saunderson, one of his tracks, and distort those Reeses.
Yeah.
No one else had done that before. And I heard this and I was like, I need to make this music right now. It's got choir stabs, which I like, and it's got what sounds like completely torn apart ship horns or whatever it is, or we'll do one more.
When it goes deep, that's just fantastic. And basically, you've been doing that ever since.
Yeah,
like, is there one track of you without a Reese?
I'm sure there is, but we don't like those, do we? I'm waiting for the bare Reese, and then I'll turn it down and talk over it.
Yeah.
But this was okay. This is dark.
Yeah.
This has aggression, but sparsely used.
Yeah.
Right? It's got this sort of wavy vibe to it, and then oh wow. And the choir stabs.
Yep.
This is cool. So
like.
the first 2 or 3 jungle tracks that I made around 96, 97, all had this sound, all had amens.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the next bit, my love for breakbeats.
Yeah.
So 2 things: choir stabs and breakbeats. Yeah, this is directly sampled from the Reese record and just distorted. And almost everything on this LP, it's called Torque.
Yeah.
No U-Turn Torque. And basically everything was Nico. Nico Sykes is the guy that engineered and mixed all these tracks and produced all these tracks. And all the other guys were just DJs who were sitting in the studio. It was like, no, mate, do that. More like this. More bare.
Yeah.
And I love this so much that when Ghost in the Machine, we were doing our first album on Perk Tracks, I was like, Perk is a really big fan of this label of No U-Turn. And I was like, can I please do a No U-Turn track on Perk Tracks? It was like, yeah, sure. And I know that his favorite track ever was Defect by these guys. Whee! It's this one. Space chatter.
Yep.
Tension. Audio calls it the virus claw. Just, you take 3 or 4 or 5 random keys and just do it on a pad.
To
this beat.
Create that dissonance kind of.
This is about 165. This beat is a Reese beat, Alex Reese, not R-E-E-S-E, like the bass line, but R-E-E-C-E. That everyone sampled from a Model 500 remix he did. But this is quite nicely distorted, and it has some sort of flow to it that I really liked, that we tried to emulate on the Ghost in the Machine track that is modeled after this track.
Yeah.
But if you listen to the pattern, now when you take a 165 BPM breakbeat and try to keep it the same pitch but make it 135 BPM, it's not super easy.
Yeah, you get the stretch artifacts.
So we spent, I think, 6 or 7 months trying to perfect this. I even went to Ed Rush. We were playing with him at Prospect, and I was like, hey, Ben, defect, that break. I can't get it right. And he was like, are you seriously asking me about something I did out of my mind in 1996? I was like, yes.
Yeah.
He was like, try the Akai Shuffle. He said. I was like, okay. Here's us replicating the whole No U-Turn vibe. I accidentally discovered those congas. Those congas are in all the old No U-Turn records. They were not using a 707 or a 909. They were using a 727, which is the Latin version that has congas.
That is so random.
But here's the break.
It does have that shuffle to it, yeah.
For people who want to know, time stretch it, take the initial clean transient and crossfade it back in. And replace the 909 parts.
That eerie atmosphere.
Needs to be right too, but yeah.
The right claw.
Which brings us to the eerie pads, which I also like to use in almost everything I've ever done. I'll show you some early examples for that too.
Yeah. Why is that so important to you, those eerie pads?
For the record, he's saying, you bad sister. And I had to have it. And we used to have amens too. So I think the eerie pads really help with the journey aspect of it. It makes you not go like this, but it makes you float on the track a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is probably a lot of people's biggest lament on modern music is that it's all drop focused and that there's not a lot of journey stuff anymore. First person to vocalize this of all people was Charlie Lownoise. He said that he really missed that a set and tracks were journeys rather than hard drops.
Yeah.
And
that sound when you plug out the cable.
But yeah, this is I sent it to Ed Rush.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
I felt like I was in the attic again.
Well done, boy. Well done.
Well, yeah, sort of like that.
That's cool.
It's a whole other story, but like when Mark Akadipane asked us to do a remix of Hitchhiker.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, hey, take the most beautiful thing you know and make it better, please. Or change it. So it's like, please no. So it was,
but
yeah.
he specifically asked you to remix that one. Because I was wondering about that. Did you pick that yourself or?
I'll tell you after this, Reese.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beauty.
which was also important to get that sound right. Yeah, what a weird moment to talk about this, but he, Perk looked at his catalog, wanted to do something with him, and he's like, I'm going to ask you and Nils to remix another Mark track, because we just done A New Mind. Are you up for it? It's like, of course. Mark set the tone for everything, and he's one of those people where you can look at, even I have at least 50 of his records.
Yeah.
So of course, but he said, well, it's probably his biggest track and a really big one. So let me think on what to do. Actually, I was like, oh shit. He's going to ask us to do We Have Arrived.
Yeah.
We can't.
Yeah.
That's just not okay. It's like calling Nils in front. It's like, no, we can't do this. It's not okay to remix We Have Arrived. It's never okay to do that. And so we're sitting there for about a week. And I said, no, I think I have it. I think I know how to remix We Have Arrived. I think we can do it. I had a whole plan. I'm still able to do this now. I'm going to loop the Erie pad. And then he calls us. He's like, I figured this whole thing. It's like, fuck, I can't do this. Okay, maybe we have to do it.
Beautiful loop.
We're going to need reverb on this.
We can actually. Yeah.
Here we go.
Amazing.
So, Perk calls us and he's like, yeah, Pitch Hiker. I was like, what? Pitch Hiker is pretty much perfection.
Yeah.
It's, just take a dry 909 and try to make it sound that fun, that good, that interesting, that big.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you're in the label was, what was it? It said music for huge space arenas.
Yeah.
And that's really what it was. It was like, it sounded huge. It's also, I think it's about 4 minutes and it's a whole side of a record. The pressing was super loud. This thing blew everything away. So I was like, no, we can't do this. We cannot do it.
Yeah.
But then both him and Mark asked us, no, please try.
Yeah.
We would love to hear your take. We're like, fuck no, we can't do this. Like, everyone's going to be so mad at us too. Mm-hmm. If you ruin it, then like, why would you even touch this track? So we just sat down and tried it. And within 15 minutes, we was like, hey, this is going to work.
Yeah.
We had it, but please, no more difficult remix requests, actually.
Yeah, but that track, I mean, that was basically just the original, just one take, right?
It might have been a few takes. Yeah. Because you can mess up. Everything back then was mid-range sweeps.
Yeah.
And you had to sort of time it right. Sometimes you had to do a thing with a fader. Sometimes your mom or a friend would have to come to the house and say, hey, can you please, when I do this, please move these two faders up for me.
Yeah.
And definitely no instant recall for the mixer. So it was do or die.
Do or die, yeah, but then your remix is kind of the opposite. I mean, you have modern techniques, you have all the difficult arrangements, all the crafting and nitpicking. I mean, if you listen to the timing of everything in the original, in a way, quite random.
I think he goes off one kick. I think he loses his place.
Yeah,
and he's off by one. Also, starting a track with a fade in. It's so ballsy. It's like starting your track with a pad. It means that back then it meant that fewer people would play it.
Yeah, definitely. But I've played it quite often actually because it's such a fun layer. Like
it's
to have
amazing.
in your third or fourth channel, just mixing. But I just have a hot cue somewhere where it's nice from there on. Fuck the fade in.
But even that record, when it starts already, it feels big. Because of the really, I guess, really good reverb and delays that he was. I think he was using Eventide 3000. I'm not entirely sure, but who knows? We can always ask him. But Tension,
Tension.
I was in the Energiehal in Rotterdam.
Yeah.
When someone suddenly in the middle of their set played this. Really bad loop.
Works for me.
But this was so cool. It's like it's from the start. Hey, this is
This is an experience.
Yeah, this is Adam X and Cologne and Audio Sex. Audio Sex is I think Robert Babic made a ton of techno and harder things, breakbeat things. It's an acid track with a distorted 909 kick, and it has 2 303s going. It's 12 minutes for if you need to go to the bathroom or to another area to play a track or something.
This is the moment. So from what year is this?
92.
92.
Yeah, sorry, I'm playing a lot of old music.
I like it.
It's a great segue into more tension-based music and dissonant strings. But this required some you to be a little bit daring. If you didn't have a mixable intro, it meant that a lot of people wouldn't be able to play your track.
Yeah.
And this is just something you really have to play as an intro or in the middle of a set. But it also demands attention, which is a nice move.
It helps when there's only one area, when you know you have everyone's attention.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So that's what you were doing in Energiehal.
No one had any sense of time, I think. But you know, it definitely sets the mood. It's like, okay, listen to this. And they used to play music like this together with old basic channel stuff and like really old techno. Everything was on those old Park Shift tapes. It was pretty much where hardcore was born, where people were taking, just like hardstyle was born by taking odd German records and creating a new style out of it, genre out of it. This was, you played the hardest B-side that you could find at the end of the night, and then you would invite people like Richie Houghton and Jeff Mills to come play at your club, and they would hear what the other DJs were playing and then be inspired in turn to make harder music. And then first it's the last hour that's a hard closing thing, then it creeps to the front, and then you get up tempo.
Yeah,
this is where we are.
This is where we are. But yeah, like Richie Houghton was quite a hardcore head at some point, right?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Here. Okay. Nice segue. Let's go into 2 formative Richie Houghton tracks.
And this one just goes on for another 10 minutes.
This one? 12.
I love it so far. Hey, the rim shots.
I never know if, because the 909 sounds how it sounds.
Yeah.
I never know if that shaped everyone or if it's actually correct, or if everyone just started living the way of the 909. And An American 909 is usually tuned to a C because of 60 hertz.
Yeah.
And a European 909 is tuned to a G because of about 50 hertz.
Yeah.
That's why American music sounded a little more, it sounded different.
Yeah.
And apparently, the Stunned Guy's 909 was completely wrong and fucked up, and that's why it sounded different. But good, you know?
Yeah. Fascinating.
Now this is Richie Hawtin with just a 909
Yeah.
and a mixer and an effects unit.
Bulgy gig.
One ride cymbal. Crash. If you paid me 1,000 euros, I wouldn't be able to spend enough time to try to fit. There's no way I could figure this out.
Yeah. Just happens in the moment. Also, sometimes I like to jam with a friend of mine, Vaistos. He's been on the show earlier. I think there was episode 3. Go watch it. But when we jam, things happen. And we don't always record. But when we do, I listen back and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I would like to have this on separate channels. I cannot recreate it.
So, a little bit of background. Oh yeah, this is the famous edit. Not yet. I'm a little off. This is super hard. I spent about 6 months making this version. The original is 150 and it sounds kind of crappy. It was never really available as in digital format until a few years ago. I took the transient of the best kick and I made a 135 BPM version. This is the original pitch.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And
Legendary.
this fucking guy also made this one, which I like to call the first industrial hardcore track.
Very industrial right off the bat.
I mean, this guy made beautiful techno, right? Like
Yeah.
Spaz, Plasticine, and like all these really, really pretty tracks. But he also did this.
Yeah.
He was very important for the formation of hardcore.
Super short delay.
But these guys were just fucking around in the early 90s.
Yeah.
See how hard we can push this mixer.
Yeah.
Some early Jeff Mill stuff too is so hard. But we only have 7 hours today, so we're gonna keep it short.
Fascinating characters it is. So it was really important what kind of mixer you had.
The cheaper the mixer, this is probably that Boss mixer, or just an older Mackie, but just something that you could really push. But it's not just that. I think it's effects too here. Like it's because, like you say, the short delay.
Yeah. And that beep, it makes for kind of printer sound or something. industrial machines.
That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. More tension. I'll play a really short bit of this, but stuff like this. What's going to happen?
Oh, shit. The claw.
We'll get to the hardcore in a moment.
Ooh.
The fact that it's sweeping too. It's really cool. There's movement in the pad, which makes, even though it's fast music, you have the option to go like this, or you have the option to float to it.
Yeah.
It's a buyer's choice.
That's what I often like so much about bass music. You have different layers to choose from.
Yeah, and I also really like to put those layers in all my other music. But, you know, tension swings. That was a better one.
The double claw.
And this track's only 9 minutes. It's the Breakage final chapter VIP of Acid Rain by Equinox, which is an old jungle track that was already quite chaotic. And Breakage just took it and said, "Come with me, please." This starts with a really simple amen pattern, and over the course of 9 minutes becomes super fucked up, super weird. It's something that you really have to listen to from the start to be able to get it. I've been able to play it twice in my life, played the whole track to a crowd.
What kind of occasion?
This was during our 6-hour set as the Outside Agency at Prospect. We had an entire room for the second room for 6 hours. Just played it in the middle.
Yeah.
Started at, I think, 110 and ended at 500 BPM or something.
As you do, yeah.
As one does. He also waits a good 2 minutes to bring the first sub in. And all of this was, of course, hand-programmed. There's no glitch plugins. You have to treat and process every bit of that break.
Yeah.
We'll discuss that too, how easy it is to take a drum loop, but to actually do something good with it. This requires a lot of affinity work, practice, I guess. Not every person is born to be a good plumber. But this guy can plumb the shit out of some amens.
It's Mario.
Excellent plumber.
That's illegal.
People used to come to my house while I was making jungle and say, "How can anyone dance to this?"
Yeah.
Like the crazier stuff. But my little sister would always be sitting in my room while I was working on music, and if I was making jungle, the craziest little breakbeats cut-ups, she would just sit there and be like, coloring away.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I always list it as an example. And like this is something that she would understand.
Yeah.
We'll fast forward to.
But I hear often from people that they find it calming to listen to this kind of music. Like the music is doing all the busy stuff, and they themselves can be calm within
This is likely
atmosphere.
People on the spectrum or ADHD
Yes,
people that tell you this.
exactly.
Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
So there's 5 more minutes to go. I'll spare you that. But so you pick more tension string, but outside agency, or a lesson on
1 BPM.
or a good breakbeat.
Give me another good breakbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To hear the whole version, go to the internet. Okay. James Brown had a drummer.
Yeah.
First, we're gonna start by tightening up with the drums.
His name was Clyde Stubblefield.
Clyde Stubblefield.
Clyde Stubblefield. He played drums on Tighten Up. Here, Soul Pride, the funky drummer, is his. He's responsible, Cold Sweat, he's responsible for so many breaks that were very frequently sampled in electronic music. If this guy could have been listed as drummer on those tracks, he would not have died poor.
No.
Like the drummer who drummed for the Winston brothers and the Winstons on the Amen Brother track.
Yeah.
But yeah, he so listen to this segment where Maceo tells him to just play a drum solo.
Yeah.
We're gonna start by tightening up with the drums. We're gonna start by tightening up with the drums. Come on, drums.
Now remember, this guy only had 2 hands. So when you hear that fancy right cymbal going in the hi-hats, he is using just 1 hand to do all those drum rolls.
Tighten up.
Honestly, I never understand how drummers work. I could never.
Not like us, no.
No, I could never.
This track is called Tighten Up Tighter, which has that drum break. But Dev Paradox is so good at making it seem like the guy is in there drumming.
Yeah.
So yes, you can take a loop, you can take an Amen, you can put it in Ableton Live or whatever and just time stretch it right and use it to fill your track. But this is a craft.
In the room. Yeah.
So now you got me. It's got tension,
Yeah.
spookiness, darkness, and good breakbeats.
Those vocals. Don't forget the vocals.
Eerie vocals.
Yeah. Those vocals whisper to me.
Yeah, when I'm not scared already, I would like to be whispered to be even more afraid. Yeah, you get the picture. It just does this the entire time. This is a breakbeat I very frequently use in everything. I always try to put Clyde in everything. But question for you.
Yeah.
If you make this, you heard that bit from the drummer. You hear what he did with it.
Yeah.
Should some money go to the drummer?
Should somebody go to...
Should some money,
Oh,
whatever
yeah,
money
yeah,
he's
yeah,
making,
yeah.
should it go to the drummer? Yes or no? Because even if I give you 20 drum sets and 10,000 years, you cannot get your drums to sound the same.
No. Yeah, it's the whole the whole artist getting paid thing is a very difficult question, I would say. I really don't know. And like if you could easily pay like a percentage of
You can.
everything.
All you have to do when you register your work with a neighboring rights organization, like SENA, PPL, you can list Mr. Clyde Stubblefield as, or you can list Hardcake 22. Which one was it?
10, Hardcake 10.
You can list Hardcake 10 as a producer.
I don't actually know where Hardcake 10 is originally
Nobody knows.
sampled
If you
from.
know, please call the number.
It's like in the Plutonium Boy sample pack, but he definitely did not make it. So,
but yeah, if you can definitely do that. If somebody helped you a lot in the studio, like say somebody visits and they really do a lot, say hey, maybe put this section here, put that section there. You could list them as an arranger. When you register the work, you can do that. But of course,
but it's like not usual to do that for things you have sampled.
No,
and you can just do that.
I mean, how many times has the Amen been sampled?
A zillion,
and used, like
times.
And some people are really fuck it. We'll play one of my Amen tracks.
Yes, let's go.
Do I discuss the whole jungle sampling section? Yes or no? No. This is a track I made with my friend SPL, who now does EDM festival trap as Champagne Drip.
Yeah. Wait, I knew this, but Champagne Drip is SPL.
Yep.
Yes.
That's why he's so good.
Yeah.
Tension Strings. One of our biggest heroes that we all share in hard drum and bass is Technical Itch. He made a lot of tracks that were just steppy like this, and then suddenly, occasionally, have a little bit of an Amen.
Yeah.
But an Amen instead of that. So occasionally Amen, then a little bit more, then a little bit more. And then a whole section with amens, and then go back to steppiness. So this is really us copying his structure, not necessarily the track.
Nice. This snare, by the way, feels very typical for this. A very static kind of snare.
We sat there and was like, okay, let's each make like 10 or 20 different amens.
Yeah.
So process differently, pitch differently. Through a vocoder. Yeah, Technical Itch was definitely the master of this.
From what year is this?
2010, maybe? 8? No, 9 or 10. Back to the tension string. And they used to have jungle areas at Hellraiser.
Really? A jungle area at Hellraiser?
I'll say more about this.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Remember this moment. You're standing there. The sound is way too loud. It's against every regulation known to man. And you're like...
Playing with the contrast. Little door just opened.
Now that I think of it, jungle and drum and bass were already doing switches where breakbeats versus kicks in hardcore and modern hardcore.
Yeah.
With when I have to master a track for someone now or mix something down, it's like 10 different tracks because that's 10 different kicks. But Jungle always had that, and the trick was always back then already to have the sequential breaks sound equally heavy.
Yeah. It's very comparable actually to the whole kick thing. But when you sample, nice. But when you sample a vocal like that, should you credit them who you sampled?
If you can tell me where that's from, sure. But that's why now almost a lot of people are sampling anymore. But electronic music was always really sample based.
Yeah.
Because the cheapest way to get started, if you didn't have money to buy all the synths, the cheapest way to get somewhere was to buy a sampler.
Yeah.
And to be able to make kicks, you needed the 909 drum machine or a clone or a really good sample of it that you could overdrive. So not everybody could afford that.
Yeah.
So a lot of DIY stuff is just, steel.
Yeah.
And back then when you could easily sell 5,000, 10,000 copies of something, if somebody had a hit with something in the early 90s, they would just sample all those sounds and recreate it and make their own record.
Yeah, exactly.
So Hellraiser and Digital Overdose used to have a jungle room. It was ambient, with actual mattresses, people lying down in one of the areas.
Yeah,
and it was upstairs was a jungle room, and they were playing crazy loud music there. And to hear music like this there was really, really fun.
Yeah.
So Noel and I even approached. Immortal Sound Productions? I said, hey, can we please do a crossover set at your event? Mm-hmm. We do both.
Yeah. And
we play sets that have both in it. And I think the world is ready for it. They weren't ready for it yet, but that was their last event.
Yeah.
That was the last one they did. And, they were interested, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay, one more tension string.
Mm-hmm.
My mother always said that you cannot start a track with a pad because then no one will play it.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? I'm going to have my Adam X, ADSX Cologne, Brooklyn Massive moment. I'm going to have my Acid Rain VIP moment. I'm going to do this. All my lessons combined in one thing.
All your lessons, what not to do.
This is the tension strings from drum and bass. This is We Have Arrived energy. This is everything that's cool about what I liked about old hardcore and industrial and Rhesus.
Yeah.
And the snare is layered with an actual pile driver. An actual pile driving machine.
I want what is mine.
And if you're really paying attention, it falls completely quiet before the drop. It serves no function other than to prepare you.
Yeah.
It does not connect to the track. It comes back later, but it doesn't really connect.
You must return to us.
Return what you took.
You must return to us. The Creator commands it.
I want what is mine returned, or I will dismantle you piece by piece.
Okay.
You must return to us.
My favorite thing, distorted ride cymbals. Other favorite thing.
Yeah.
I have one for that too.
But talking about intros, like in the past, at some point I got really concerned with having mixable intros. Nice. Got really concerned with having mixable intros to my music. But then I noticed my music was too weird for other people to play anyway. So then I was just like, fuck it. And everybody has hot cues now, so they don't have an excuse.
Yeah, we used to not have hot cues back in the day, son, on tape decks and vinyl.
That was seriously way more difficult to mix then.
Another thing I do a lot is I hide some of the prettiest parts of my tracks at the end.
Yeah, I do the same.
I'll play one of the pretty ending things too.
Yeah, just make the most awesome outro. It's a curse.
We'll wait for the little breakdown,
Yeah.
which is, I think, quite unnerving and pretty. And then it has a Clyde Stubblefield breakbeat right after the second drop. And then we'll play something else.
And do you see like DJing with vinyl, like how it used to be, as a necessary evil, or as something beautiful?
Breaking every known law of the universe. I'm rewriting the laws of the universe.
No. The minute that Noel and I were able to use the precursor to Tractor, Final Scratch, the minute we didn't have to wait to press something and we could play our own original music faster and exclusively that, we switched to it.
Yeah.
It is really dumb not to embrace new technology.
Yeah.
The minute it's there, go for it.
You are still releasing vinyl though.
Yeah. Vinyl adds credibility to your brand. No, it's still really fun. There's
It's
still,
true.
As long as I can still sell 300 copies of everything that people want to buy, because it is cool to have it. I speculate.
It is.
I speculate that perhaps if we sell 100 records, I think maybe 3 or 4 of those will get played at events.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 will be played at home once. And the rest might just end up at the wall, on the wall.
Yeah.
I hope it's better.
Yeah. But for me, it's also, I've released some albums on vinyl, really to be collector's items. It has a big value, I think, in that sense.
But no, for practical, I mean... It was looping. I mean, you're not going to ask a candy factory if they could please make all the candy by hand again. They're going to be like, why would we do that?
Yeah.
You must return.
The rest is available on the internet, guys.
Yes.
The creator commanded.
Yeah, I never even learned to DJ with vinyl.
You must return to us.
Too young for that. When I stepped in, it was CDs. I'm happy we're done with CDs.
Yeah, but what I liked about CDs is that, wait, I'm looking for which one again? And, oh yeah, it's somewhere in the first 5 slots of my CD wallet.
Yeah.
And it's one of the last tracks on this disc.
Yeah.
Or back then, it's a Mokum. It's a red record in the back of my record bag. Fuck, what was the title?
Yeah.
So, early influences. DJ Rob, for one reason or another, I'll play it to you later, was really influential. Gizmo was heavily influential. And of course, Mark, and then perhaps Miro was even a bigger influence to me. I just saw this track here, so I'll play it. This is something really crazy that Gizmo did with breakbeats. That was really inspiring to me because it's completely off. It's his remix of Den Haag Hakken. doesn't always have to be that complex.
It's true.
One of the saddest moments of my career was in an interview that we did for Thunderdome Radio. It was MC Justice interviewing us and Gizmo about the scene. And Gizmo was stood right next to me saying, it's really too bad nobody's really doing anything with breakbeats and hardcore anymore.
Yeah.
And Justice just looked at me like, we're going to let this one go.
Yep. Reality check.
I mean, Gizmo made things like this. This gets really noisy. Everything is clipped to shit. And at the end, it's sweeping kicks. So I was
very funky so far.
It's the funky tracks, my man.
There is no guest list tonight.
Just leave the low end in the breakbeat.
Yeah.
It will color the kick.
This is very rough. I mean, I know it's one of your hobbies to have it like sound ultra distorted and controlled.
Yeah, this is not that.
This is definitely.
This is the influence.
Oh, wow.
He also did things like this. You'll recognize it's the same reverb and the same kick. That hi-hat sound you can only get if you distort the cutting head of when you're cutting the record. He made so much good acid and big reverby kicks.
Again, very funky feeling to it.
Yeah. Anvils. Done. You know that would work. Jamming.
What's the BPM of this?
150.
150, yeah.
But yeah, acid is I really like old acid, like a good hard acid, but skipping almost the whole segment because there's too much. Then around 93, 94, Roughneck became really big with his hardcore sound.
Yeah.
Juno's fast stuff. And this really grabbed us too, because what I didn't like about old techno was the bleeps.
Yeah.
I like the choir stabs. And what hardcore brought was the Junos, which feel quite organic.
Very fat, moving kind of sound. Yeah.
So I didn't know this, but the thing that was always missing in my life was apparently an Alpha Juno synthesizer that Roland manufactured.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it sounds so happy, but some people were... The oscillators themselves are really happy sounding. But some people were really able to make very dark and cool things with it. It does require some discipline. This also really played into my my love of mid-range sweeping on sounds. I'll play you a track that I used to sit. I used to sit with my headphones at home and be like, "How do you get the kick this long?
Yeah.
Like, how do you get this punch in that year?" Like, I just
Because what year is it?
it's around 93, I think, 94.
I love that character of the
He switches after this part. He switches to something which is almost a breakdown, but it's not a breakdown. But it's just it's slightly more. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Then he goes to a more journey bit. Then at the end of that bit, he cuts out the kick. You hear the breakbeat sample, and listen to the beat go, and whoo, a parrot or whatever the fuck it is. This is the little mini breakdown. And after that, it drops so hard, I would just rewind it and listen to it and like, how do people do this? This is before I knew what an Alpha Juno was.
Yeah, just hearing a sound you've never heard before. Yeah.
Just the kick, which is not the same key as the Alpha Juno.
Of course it isn't.
Fantastic. I called Patrick before the show to ask him if it was okay to say that. Just it had an organic feel to it, like something intangible.
Yeah.
Like what is a Juno? It seems so fat and thick. And
or organic, like you say, like very, very rounded or fluent, almost like character to it. That gliding texture.
And the two masters of this sound were, of course, Roughneck and Predator. Predator had really strong kicks for back then. This is 96, 97.
Wow. Yeah.
This to me is one of the best Juno phrases ever done in terms of grittiness, how dark it still sounds and how driving, and the mid-range sweeps. It's fantastic. This is, as we say in Dutch, chef's kiss.
From 100 gangs. There's over 100 more. That's 20,000 hardcore members, 40,000 current affiliates, and 20,000 more not organized and ready to fight. Can you count, suckers? I say the future is ours.
Happy synth, but it sounds big.
I like the key of the kick actually in this case. With the synth.
But the Juno colored a lot of those records back then too, because they didn't remove the low end.
You know, you hear it clashing actually.
And then I bought my first Juno.
Oh, and then you discovered, that's how that works.
My dad actually told me, he's like, these are not samples. I can hear Portamento, I can hear the synth doing this. And it's like, okay, well, which one? Miro was doing triplets. A lot. It's like, I can do triplets too.
Don't try to apprehend him.
shitty thing with sweeping your Junos was sometimes you would have too much in the mids and you would clip the master too much.
Yeah.
So the only reason you would have to redo takes is when you fucked up on the sweeping.
Mm-hmm.
Sweeping, for all the people that are still watching and not producers somehow, is when you take the mid-range, boost it 15 or 20 dB and then change the frequency.
Gives a great movement to the sound. Like opening your mouth.
It's so gritty. It's so gritty.
I love the attitude of these kicks.
I put this together too.
I never paid Chuck D for this either.
No?
No.
How about Backpack Wisdom? Are you gonna play that one later? Or?
I'm not, but I do have stories about that one.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Sorry, too fast. Quickly change the Juno patch, now.
Real time.
What you're hearing right there, that is my DJ Rob influence.
Okay.
He would seriously have all his drum rolls at the drop
Yeah.
instead of at the end of a section.
Yeah.
So here I go.
Yeah.
Which brings us to... I never really asked Mark or Rob how this worked out, but this record was released on Cool Man. There's all these remixes of Correcte Atmosfeer by Smash. And the sequencing is 200 BPM. The sequencing is completely off.
Is diese Bassdrum korrekt?
That vocal.
Ist diese Bassdrum korrekt? Und diese?
But listen to the structure.
Hier ist die korrekte Atmosphäre oder was?
And that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
'Cause I copied that 100,000%.
Yeah. It's a great way. It's a great way to enter
It's
a new
really
segment.
fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So that was a big influence on me.
Actually, I think I also quite often just like to start a drop with like a double kick. Dun dun
Yeah.
dun dun. Dun. It
Also really
just
fun.
works.
I try to put it in every techno track that we do.
Yeah.
I try to put the double kick, but it doesn't always work in that groove.
No, it
but
doesn't.
when we
No.
can do it, happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really, it's a really simple melody,
Mm-hmm.
but it works because of the speed and because of how silly the sound is. And if you played that melody on a piano, it would be terrible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you have masters of minimalism. Like I haven't really played anything by Mark yet.
Yeah.
I didn't want to play anything by Mark Akadipane because he invented everything pretty much already. But this is one of my favorite tracks by him.
Yeah.
Imagine you only have a 909, a reverb unit, and a mixer, and you somehow are able to, with a kick, a clap, and a snare and a hi-hat, one little vocal sample, make this. I have not been able to, even now with more than 30 years of producing, been able to make this hi-hat.
Motherfucker.
This cuts through so hard.
The way it distorts along with the kick.
Motherfucker.
I often see it as a great challenge, like to use as little elements as possible, but maybe with an FX chain like this. I love doing that.
I like when I have really simple stuff and then just to add details everywhere.
Yeah.
Like even if you have a simple hi-hat like this, but just make it the panning on the reverb. But it's only 2.5 minutes, I think. This is program 1, Louder Than a Bomb. There's 4 mixes with the same set of sounds on this record, and they're all 4 of them are really cool. Watch Me Shoot This Motherfucker from Boys in the Hood. And then I was at Hellraiser with Noel in '93 when it was PCP Live, and then he did this version, and still when I hear it, I imagine that I am some big techno DJ in his underwear standing on stage in front of 50,000 people doing this. I only played the intro, but this was, we saw this happen on stage. And back then with all the lights, us as little teenagers, it was quite impressive.
I can imagine.
A sample from Lenny D in this one.
Oh. Man, I was living in Rotterdam, but I was 4 years old. Statement. Not music for 4-year-olds.
Well, adventurous 4-year-olds. Illegal. So Lenny has one of my favorite intros ever, and one of my favorite tracks ever. One of my favorite tracks ever is Fucking Hostile by Fucking Hostile.
You remixed it also, right?
I remixed it. I said, Lenny, I just did an edit of it, and I think I can remix it.
Yeah.
He was like, right on. And then I spent way too long trying to get that done, maybe between 2010, 2011, the whole year. Because I wasn't sure if I was going to slow it down or keep it the same tempo. The tempo is 185 originally.
Yeah.
But I like to play this to people to illustrate that this was a hit.
Yeah.
That something like this could be a hit is now insane. The intro is just a bunch of kicks. He clipped the dat.
Yeah.
I have the digital masters. He clipped the dat.
That tape. Yeah.
Everything through the same master channel distorted is how you get that sound, kids. So Noel and I took a friend of ours from Goes to his first hardcore event ever. This is a guy that was into metal, Ministry, that kind of thing. And this is Central Studios. So there was the mellow room, and then further on was the hardcore room. We walked into the mellow room, and he was like, oh yeah, I get this kind of, but we had to walk through this really narrow door to get to the hardcore room, and they were playing the drop of Fucking Hostile as he walked in, as a metalhead. So he was like, shirt off, and we didn't see him the whole night.
Yeah. Quite the metal vibe indeed, yeah.
He did try to credit the guy. It says Lenny, produced by Lenny D and Sal C. And then they also played this one for him. This is Influid. Influid was 2 German producers. Really good, similar vibe. Also sampling metal vocals. This is sampled from Ministry. We call this the poor man's sidechain. Because it's not sidechain.
Nowadays, what I would call a poor man's sidechain would be like just put an LFO tool on it. It's not a real.
really
it's
that.
not a real.
Don't do that,
No.
Conrad. Stop it.
Fucking Conrad.
No, it's actually no. He doesn't do that. But some people, among those are legendary producers like Ophidian, and one guy in Ghost in the Machine likes to sometimes put just quarter note LFO tools on things.
Yeah. Sometimes I use it, but very deliberately, because when I want it as a sidechain, I wanted to interact with the original signal.
You know Citrus, Fascinating Rhythm.
Yeah.
It's a really, really distorted, very similar sounding track. That same guy made one of our favorite old school tracks. Well, not old school, just old tracks. This is a track that I will sometimes still, random moments, this will pop into my head because it's so incredibly catchy. But this same guy is Citrus Fascinating Rhythm.
Actually, back in the day when you had your studio, what kind of reference did you, what kind of monitor, speakers, or what the fuck did you have?
It's really cool. I had really shitty huis- en kamer, tv, tuin, keukenspeakers. I had nothing.
Yeah.
I had an old Techniques set with one of the tweeters broken and one of the one of the sub speakers was actually also damaged. But I knew that if I cranked it in a certain way and I could still hear the punch, that the kick was good.
Yeah.
When I bought my first semi-professional set of monitors, I started ruining every mix imaginable.
Yeah.
It is so much more useful to know your sound, the sound that you're working in.
True that. True that. Like, I used to work for many years on just the cheapest Logitech speaker 2.1, but when I had my feet on the little subwoofer, I knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, and then when you change your setup, you're
Yeah,
like,
I was lost.
why did I do that?
I was lost with my expensive speakers. Yeah.
Play the loop an octave higher. Another octave higher. And playing this is an example of the darkness I liked in older, pre-jungle breakbeat music.
Sounds like Swiss cowbells.
It's James Brown, is it? I should have played Frequency by Alternate so we could segue into choir steps.
Missed opportunity.
We might still segue, people. You can't stop us. This sounds quite happy, but it gets dark, I promise.
Energy and consciousness. Energy and consciousness.
When Goldie and Rob Playford as Roughage Crew produced Terminator, and they started pitch shifting breakbeats.
Yeah.
That's the same effect that Pitchhiker had on people. And there were more tracks that had changing kick drums, but suddenly as a gabber, you're dancing, and the pulse that you're dancing to changes.
Yeah.
So in Terminator, when the breakbeat pitch is up, people were like, what the fuck? Like, the thing we're dancing to is changing. Things like this.
It also gets this gnarly texture to it when pitch shifted.
And the reason I liked Alternate was because they sampled this one. You may have heard before.
Once or twice. Yeah, definitely not overused the last few years.
Scared to use it now.
Yeah.
But it's one of my favorite sounds in the world.
Yeah, it is. And I actually was so frustrated by it being overused that I was like, I'm going to use it anyway, and I'm going to show them that you can make awesome stuff with it.
We put it in the Nexus track on as Ghost in the Machine, the breakbeat track.
Yeah.
Because it had to be in there because it's a reference to the sound.
Yeah. And my track, if you want to look it up, it's called Check My Stab.
So Ghost in the Machine is working on a track called Stab to Death. Yeah. So you know where this is going to go.
Hell yeah.
It'll be part of the Shallow Rave EP.
Yeah. I'm quite a fan of your track titles always.
The track titles are usually, they're there before the track.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have, now I have to make Shallow Rave.
Yeah.
And now I have to make Stab to Death.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
So another really big influence for me is Miro. He was the other guy on Planet Core Productions, part of Planet Core Distribution. I'll play maybe 17 tracks by him. No, maybe 2. He was really good at intensity, and he has I think in his melodies, I'll play a melodic track later. He has really, I think he does a really classical, oh no, there's all this sadness. Maybe there's hope. No, you're sad.
Yep.
Progression in his tracks. And he was also really good at speedcore.
Yeah.
Like his speedcore follows a metal structure. Like it'll go bum, 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 and slow it down and then speed up again. But this, Conquer the World, which he did with Don Demon. I think Don Demon was Mark's distribution partner in Planet Core Distribution. But
I know you're in there. I got your dope.
the clap sets the mood, right? I will have to skip this because it's 9 minutes. I'll skip to my favorite part. Very dark. Skipping it. Sweeping though. Really fun thing that people don't do anymore. If you distort your kick by having the fader all the way open, and then this is them just moving the fader up and down for the kick.
Yeah. I actually love doing that. Like first I make a whole distortion chain for a kick, and then I start fucking with the volume of the original input signal. Like you know my track, the 90s called And They Want Our Gabber Back. Yeah.
Very few people actually got to this part when they play it because it takes so long.
Quite. Another thing I'm wondering about, how was the sound system at parties back in the days?
Good, actually.
Yeah?
Actually really, really good.
Oh. Because there weren't the line arrays yet.
Nope. Really simple. And then at the end, my favorite bit.
Thank you.
This guy also did this one, which is one of my favorite. I don't even know if it's speedcore. We're gonna have to call Akira to verify whether it's speedcore or not. But it's a super, super influential track to me. There's lots of mid-range sweeping. There's metal style structure.
Mm-hmm.
Really good mixing for how loud and fucked up and distorted it is, and stabs. 225. You can tell this was the same guy as the track before.
So this was actually being played on good sound systems, you're saying?
Yeah.
How would they compare?
Oh, the PCP stuff was blowing everything else away.
Yeah. Offbeat snares always. Yo.
Very metal.
Very hardcore.
You can tell this guy knows his music.
Yeah. Intense.
It's fantastic. But he also did this kind of stuff. And I think these guys are really winning because of their use of reverb and delays. For me. I'm not sure.
It gives a lot of space to it, yeah. Interesting phase stuff.
Yeah, don't hit the mono button on this one. For those of you who will listen to this track at home, at the very end, he leaves the synth bare, and you'll find that many producers sampled this synth and used it. For the record, this is the same person that produced the previous two things.
Very sexy synth.
Very sexy music. But he always had these really sad progressions. This one has it too. And old music takes forever to get to the point. But that's the point. I don't know if he thought he was making hardcore or anything. I think they were just making music.
Yeah.
But this came out quite late. I think this is like 97.
with genres, I often like to have kind of a reference of genres to start kicking against them. Which I find very difficult with what's happening to techno right now. So I don't know what to kick against. There's nothing.
Oh yeah. Cool. I do a quick I saw this. I do a quick acid thing.
Yeah.
There's for a brief period of years, there was really good acid coming out of Denmark.
Denmark of all places. Shout out to Wavelizer.
I thought this was fantastic. The hi-hat, the distortion, the filtering on the hi-hat here is important. This is very typical Danish acid.
Okay.
Wow, it's the fucking hi-hat, guys. My favorite thing, the poor man's sidechain, the poor man's distortion, is what happens when you just have everything going through the same channel and just you try to overload your DAT or your mixer. And this track has one of the best sounding distorted alongside the kick right cymbals ever. It's by Oliver Chesler and John Selway. I'll skip to the right part in a minute. Clap. You can hear bass in the clap.
Yeah.
A little bit of a fast forward. One of my favorite drops ever. Listen to the right coming in, it's beautiful.
That is a ride.
I see your face. You want to hear this again?
I want to hear this again. Rewind. That's the crunchiest ride I've ever heard.
Yep. But yeah, techno, right?
Yeah.
So when I first heard tracks like this is Snake Eyes by Ansem. It is a bit of an edit I made of it. I added a psytrance sub to it to make it a little heavier. But to me, if you take all the industrial techno from 2014 to 17, put it in a blender, this is what would come out for me. This to me is the ultimate industrial techno track from the techno that out of the techno that I still liked. We miss you, Kieran. Please come back to us.
He made really good music. Yeah.
when this drops, remember that this guy was headlining all the big harder techno events. When this drops.
I remember. $136.
Yeah, I'm playing it. I think the original is 132 even.
Yeah.
But it works well at
Definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, just go on the internet, the same internet that we mentioned before, and look up everything by Ansem. It's mostly fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so currently the hard techno in the pandemic just sort of choked on itself. A lot of people stayed home, no longer going to events. The vested order of techno that would always be copied, like people would copy events like Awakenings and just copy their lineups. Whatever they were doing was okay, but they now also have to book harder names that play things that their source crowd really doesn't appreciate, and it's never enough to bring all the young hard techno kids, the shirtless kids, into the arena.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting time right now. There's people who look at that stuff, the harder techno stuff with rave stabs. It's now at around 160, 165.
Mm-hmm. Very fast.
It's very commercial. There's Bochka, which is really fast, 170, 180 BPM, very trippy, lo-fi music. And there's a middle industrial techno scene that has nothing to do with this industrial techno scene.
Uh-huh.
I don't really know where I fit. What did I do here? Oh, yeah. So what do? You just make the music that you love. That's why I want to give a special shout out to my good friend, Steph Death Machine.
Mm-hmm.
He made an EEPROM and Shades and Alex Perez inspired dubstep track at 120. That is just insane. I was like, you should do more of this.
Yeah. You have also been doing some dubstabby stuff lately.
I have, yeah. So this is a segue into why I'm not making drum and bass. I'll fast forward to the good bits.
Rock wide.
For those that don't understand, this is really sick, really well produced. I think a really good hardcore producer can... I think drum and bass is the hardest genre to get right. Hardcore producers can graduate to drum and bass, but it's harder for drum and bass people to graduate down to hardcore.
Uh-huh.
Making a kick is, you need to go to school, you need to go to kick school for 10 years.
Yeah. If we're talking about controlled distortion,
so the breakdown here and the drop are sick. Steph, you are a sick man. We're gonna be looking to have you committed soon. So you're sick.
Yeah, this groove. Yes, please.
Yeah, that is so sick.
Yeah.
It's inspired by things like this. Of course, he's from the UK, so they have that in their blood.
Yeah.
They understand breakbeats, but this is really, really high level shit.
one is an instant rewind. Yes.
Very cocky to say that about yourself.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I was always primarily active in drum and bass and hardcore at the same time. But I always had fewer drum and bass gigs than hardcore gigs. And then when techno became a thing for me and Nils, I really had to choose. I can apparently only maintain 2.1 projects. So I had to let go of drum and bass, which I really, really love doing. But I was always a hard drum and bass name.
Yeah.
So there's already less work for us than for the main guys. And I had to let it go. But that's why there's tracks like, there's always snares and breakbeats in everything I do. That's why there's a slowed down, no U-turn track on the Ghost in the Machine album. It is why I still make lots of drum and bass bits in everything. And I'll play sometimes we put some of the best stuff at the end of the track. So I'll play you the ending of Ghost in the Machine's Come On. Choir stab. Oh no. How did that? And a tension string. What's going on? It's almost like there's a pattern.
Surprise!
Come on. It makes everything unnecessarily complicated. To have to make a drum and bass section that fits within the techno section, and then there's like 7 different breakbeats here. Come on. But yeah, this has everything. The choir stab, it has different breakbeats, it has a tension string at the end, and
you just cannot help it.
The good thing is that Nils also really doesn't mind drum and bass in the jungle.
Yeah.
Come on. And for some reason on perk tracks, we always end up making something that's one of the tracks will be really long and can take the whole A side. And distorted rides always. One of my favorite versions of the Amen is the Trayman, which is an Amen break that Dahmer Roland engineered for Trace that he always uses, and we made it 135.
Metalheads. Yes.
So why do you do this? There's no one's gonna get to this part except us. We sometimes play it and then we start something new here. But it's at the end of 7 minutes. But I just cannot help myself to do you mind if we put drum and bass in this one?
Yeah, but I kind of in the past I did it so often that I put an awesome outro in my track. And I would always, when I play the back-to-back, don't mix out yet. It's a very important part. And it's so hard to not play it. But when I look back at it now, it's just like, dude.
I know. Dude. But this is art versus entertainment.
Yeah, exactly that. And also the purpose of the track, like, what do you make for
fucking hardcore.
For a live set or for listening purposes.
You realize when you have to prepare a mix for yourself, then you really realize, oh, this section is too long.
Yeah.
People used to tell me and Noel, like, yeah, you need mixable intros, and we were like, no, people need to learn how to DJ.
Yeah.
But they were right.
To be more aggressive. Oh
yeah, the reason this is here because there's also breakbeats. And this is just a sound design orgy, I guess.
Yeah, quite.
Taking off the motherfucking set. Motherfucker.
And the same thing I say to people about structure. We used to get demos and they say, hey, you really need to make a 16, 16, 16, 16 structure, which is more important The hum, the transistor hum for the 909 is taken from Lenny's dad of fucking Hostile. So we used to tell people, like, look, imagine you're a painter. Yeah. Sure, you can be really experimental and do things outside or do unconventional things, but when you want to end up in a museum, you have to put a frame around your painting, right? Think of the structure as the frame to your painting.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
What's wrong?
I need something stronger.
Drum and bass could be so cool and adventurous. Like, I picked this one to give you as an example, to show an example of a really experimental drum and bass track that I really like.
Mm-hmm.
Tension.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a pattern. This is a Switch Technique remix for Dolphin. And Switch Technique was is a beautiful, quiet little man who has drum demons inside of him.
I guess they like to come out sometimes.
You have to imagine that this is to people who go to commercial drum and bass events. This is like, what the fuck is going on? But there's also people that will hear this in the second room and go,
yeah, that's my
this is
shit.
what I need.
Yeah.
That's currently my biggest complaint about the scene is that you used to have area 2, 3, and 4 that people would wander by and go, hey, what is this here?
Yeah. Do you feel like programming has become too safe by promoters?
Safe programming for big festivals is really stupid because for them it's a very small investment.
Yeah.
To keep their feet in the underground in case something blows up, they can always promote it.
Yeah.
Something Cubase started as a techno festival.
Mm-hmm.
With Speedy J on the main stage. This was the headliner.
Mm-hmm.
Dominator had Truncate. Broken Rules play techno.
Really? Truncate at Dominator?
First edition.
Let's
go. Surgeon used to play Defcon.
Yeah.
You know, until things phase out and tastes change and you start steering the market rather than I guess you become the market.
Yeah.
But it's always wise to keep your feet in the underground. But I know that Q-Dance does that. Q-Dance talks to people who know all the relevant scenes in case that they might somehow overlook it. You know, but not everybody does that. A lot of people are followers.
Mm-hmm. That's what I love about DEFCON. All the little things and daring
do.
Yeah.
Then I'll play one of my favorite tracks by my studio mate Conrad. There's a melody in the breakdown that he makes that is composed from different sections of the track. and it's quite insane. It's one of his best things.
When you think of me, you should think of fire, burning brightly like the sun. Upon I enchant him, and I am the only one. As I sing my melodious song to him in the dawn. From the ashes.
A little more musical than the Gizmo stuff we were playing earlier, for instance.
Hello.
But it's all hardcore.
And again, I am the phoenix.
Here's a computer, and 10 years of time, you won't be able to do it.
For me, quite an unexpected placement of the kick in the mix.
Okay. Yeah, he's weird.
Yeah.
He's a weird guy.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Look, you're a weird little guy. I walked into Triple Vision back when it was still a record store a long time ago. And Roel, one of the guys who's working in the store, was like, hey, here's a drink. Listen to this. And I had never heard anything like this before. This is an older track by DJ Producer.
Just a man of thoughts who can get off with it. Listen up as I'll take out the round bit. 4 minutes calculates the time to full of a beat. That's sort of a minute.
It's all stolen from something, but the detail in the edits and the tick is sick.
Just a man of thoughts who can get off. Listen, take out the round bit. 4 minutes calculates the time to that's sort of a minute. From the root then got in and win it. This was down my this is the warning. I get what be specific. I'm not terrific. Just a man that's who can get up.
It's really slow music, actually. It's super dark.
Nightmare soundscape.
Yeah, check his whole catalog. The other favorite thing in the world that we didn't discuss really is the Reese's.
Yes.
The Reese bassline.
Yeah.
I'll play you a track, a drum and bass track, Messiah by Conflict.
Yeah.
It has a long intro, so we're gonna skip some of the intro.
Are we? Okay, a little bit.
You can.
Yeah. But this tune, yeah.
When people first heard this, the first thought was like, "What the fuck?" And then the second thought was, "Shit, I don't have this."
Yeah.
The assholes released it on a 10, like a 5 vinyl box, so everybody would have to buy it to have this.
Fuckers.
But this is one of my all-time favorite Reese's because it has tension string build-up and a chant to go along with it. Yeah. it's really the combination of the two.
Yeah. This is spiritual. This is spiritual. Like this is also one of my favorite. When I heard this for the first time, I really remember it. Like,
yeah, it's
like really a spiritual experience.
I had that. I had a spiritual experience when I first heard Die Nazi Scum by Rob G and the Party Animals.
Fair enough, yeah.
You asked me about the sound systems back then.
Yeah.
97, I think, 96, the sound was so incredibly fucking loud.
Yeah.
At Sporthalle Zuid, Amsterdam. So much bass also. And all the bass was still in the Gino and the breakdown. It was a sweep, and I had what I could only imagine is a drug experience because of the breakdown. This is an unreleased track by Noisia. It has a sick Reese, and I'll play it because it's one of my favorite Reeses.
But it's unreleased.
Yeah.
From what year?
Long time ago.
Long time ago. Great bass.
This idiot didn't take his favorite Reese ever. I will quickly play one of the last really, really, really good fast hardcore tracks before everything slowed down, before new style. This is a Shadowlands Terrorist, so it's zany mostly. And this is really all about the breakdown, but he had really good kicks. He was going to be the best in hardcore.
Yeah.
Before he switched to hardstyle.
What, like, was he? Do you know, working together with Michel Pollan already? It sounds like those kicks.
Really?
They did like as donkey rollers later also, which revolutionized hardstyle basically.
Fast forward.
But yeah, they basically invented pitch kicks.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah.
And the Lord bless them for this.
Yeah.
So.
Funky.
It goes on for quite a while. But I think it's like a full 3 minutes or something.
Break it down, right? Yeah. No lies there.
With these kicks back then, I was like, damn.
Great character.
Yeah, it's hard as fuck. To wrap it up, I like when I guess I like journey music a little more than I like hard drops.
Yeah.
But I do, of course, occasionally enjoy making hard drops. But something will always have. I do want to add journey aspects to everything. So something like this, which we're gonna fade into because, damn, it's long.
I'll keep that in.
Is that not what every guest does?
Starting to zone out.
Where's the one?
Yeah, after a while you lose it. I had it, which is cool.
One of my greatest joys was playing this as a closing track at the Big Sunda stage with Nils. I made a short edit, which is only 6.5 minutes. Drop, but also journey.
Yeah. It's quite an understated drop, I would say.
This would explode everywhere. The only thing I didn't get to do now is play one of my pretty endings, but I do have a nice closing track. Listen to the whole thing only on Spotify. Yeah, I guess it was really fun for me to go through all this music, which to me is some of it very dated, but timeless anyway.
Yeah.
So I figured that I would have loved to have gone into a huge acid section and an even huger funk and hip hop section, but I'll play one hip hop track as the last one, because people are screaming for us to stop. And
you better stop talking.
Yeah, Maurice at the fact-checking desk over there is also pointing at his watch, so it's really time. Sorry,
hey, Maurice.
It's really time to knock it off. But yeah, this is a track by Atmosphere called WND, Riders Never Die.
Yeah,
which I think is a fitting ending to this. This is him. Atmosphere is a very chill, not necessarily macho, very threatening rap group from Minneapolis. And he imagines a story where somebody picks a fight with him.
Yeah.
And he goes to get his gun in his house. And then at the end of the song, he's like, oh, fuck, I don't even have a gun. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
So, here we go. The snare is really loud. The publishing company of the producer is called Ant Turn That Snare Down.
It's summer and I'm chilling on my steps with my little crew, just like a video, just like all the little rappers do. We voice love to the heads we know that walk past, sunshine and smiling, living out of a shot glass. And I talk fast when it comes to girls. Hey baby, I'm just a nut trying to fuck a squirrel. Maybe we can shut the world up, let some slug into your life. Suddenly she hikes an eyebrow up, like what do you mean? And I start bugging like if I was to follow you home, would you keep me? Would you feed me? Would you pet me? Would I fuck you till you're sleepy? She said I'm creepy and walked off. Too late, already got up on the fact you even stopped. You knew I treat you like an object. You knew I was a rapper. You knew it was the trend for us rapper men to disrespect women in front of friends nonetheless. Here comes that kid Sean I used to be cool with, went to school with. Now this kid is talking fool shit, getting super touchy with his lips about how I stuck his bitch supposedly. What the fuck is this supposed to be? Sean's got nuts, he's alone, I'm with crew. Now tell me what the fuck am I supposed to do? I spew. Look, Chief uses make-believe as a cartoon. I happen to know your bitch sleeps in until the afternoon. Honestly, my man, you don't bother me, cause everybody bleeds. Now go and ask your seed who was father. I'm like what? What? I'm like what, kid? What? I'm like what? What? I'm like what, kid? What? I'm like what? What? I'm like what, kid? What? I'm like what? 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 Now Sean kicked my ass, I ain't gonna lie, I ain't gonna laugh. It wasn't fun, but fuck him, I'ma get my gun. Shit gets done like that in the world of rap. If they pushing on your pride, you're just a pussy if it slides. So I sprint up 3 flights, didn't do the feet wipe at the door, tracking dirt and blood on the rug and the wood floor. Couldn't believe my squad just stood there and watched. Word to God, Spawn telling me to blame it on my cock. I'm amped and I'ma shoot every motherfucker out there. I'm ill and I'ma prove that shit when I get back downstairs into the bedroom. My passion aimed at the closet, visualizing the top shelf, that's where the shoebox is. I push the top up enough to fit my hand in, reaching through the box in a frenzy, realizing that it's empty. Hand rests in the box, head festers in an open stun. Then I remember I don't even own a gun. What? What? I'm like what, kid? What? I'm like what? What? I'm like what, kid? What? I'm like what?
Also a combination of party music and storytelling.
I'm like what, kid? What? I'm like
good journey. Good job. I happen to know your bitch sleeps in until the afternoon, sir. Yes.
Great line.
But this was sampled in Backpack Wisdom, which I thought was...
Yeah.
And they recorded this on really simple 4 tracks back in 97.
So, this is not the last track of the show, is it?
Well, I figured maybe if I was really sneaky, I could play one of my pretty endings.
Will you allow me to play another tune instead?
Sure.
Yeah. Because I just want to hear Backpack Wisdom.
You want to hear the VIP?
Is there a VIP? Okay. Screw the original.
Well, actually, this does have the tension strings.
Yeah, it does. Okay. What's different about the VIP?
Slightly different rap section and skips a few things.
Is it better or is it more compact?
It's more compact.
Yeah. We need those edits. I know. So, how did this track come to be? Because I mean, this is one of my favorite tracks.
So yeah, for the album, we wanted to go completely against what was successful for us, which was the crossbreed 175 BPM stuff we never really got around to.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of slow stuff, 200 stuff, and I've always wanted to make sort of a response to Death Chant, which sampled B-boys, really braggadocious rap music, and I was like, what if I take really braggadocious and violent rap samples from rappers that never really otherwise usually say things like that?
Yeah.
Like De La Soul, Atmosphere, Will Smith is in there.
Yeah.
So Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock. And it was really tricky to mix everything to fit in there because not everything is 100 BPM. I'm working on Backpack Wisdom 2 and 3.
Okay.
It just takes me a long time to find things I want to put in there.
Yeah, I'm there for it.
I have to steal. So Styx heard.
I'm amped and I'ma shoot every motherfucker out there.
Axel de Vrieze from VPRO, he sent Styx the track when he heard him in there. And Styx was just like, hot. It was like, oh fuck. Thank you.
Yeah, hip hop, sampling culture.
If you wanna get hurt, I'll stole your girl while you were in prison.
I mean, Milk is a party rapper, but he says step up if you want to get hurt.
Yeah.
Remember me? The one you got the technique from?
Just a little braggadocious. Remember me?
I represent from midnight to high noon.
If you wanna bring it, we can swing it, swing it. The only way you hang is by the neck.
One shows he pose threat to this one will make that one into none.
De La Soul.
Yeah.
When one shows he posed threat to this one will turn that one into none. They don't say that.
No. Beautiful.
And this is me again. Hello, drum and bass.
Yeah. But around the time this was released,
2012.
Yeah. That's when you would find me and Wavelizer in the crowd at your sets, always. Legendary.
And just a little bit of a break from the hardcore monotony. That's Will Smith.
Yeah, we were always really fascinated by the speed ramps in your set, like going faster and faster, and then mixing half tempo again.
I am.
Just a little something to break the monotony of all that hardcore.
Cause sleep is the cousin of death.
You know that sample?
And I fear no man but my shadow.
This is one of those precious moments of ferocious payback.
Motherfuck, right, bitches.
If you don't like it, then chew my wood. I couldn't care less, cause that's how I do.
Hardcore cat, how with all of my check.
Lekker.
Holding my testicles.
Dick motherfucker ball. Shit ass.
The NWA is usually violent, but
Goddamn.
I dress like an old man, so what?
and this is a personal thing too. Yeah.
Plus, I don't smoke cigarettes.
Yeah.
Smoke-free generation.
Based.
On the dance floor, never ever lag. Here we go one more time.
Yeah, and the sample at the ending is really arrogant.
Let's start with plastic. The fight to the death. Eyes bloody wet, blood naked with my dick out.
So I play duck hunt to avoid going to prison.
I played duck hunts to avoid going to prison.
Sesame Street, we got big birds.
Young Jeezy.
Goddamn, that sucks. It could be done, but only I could do it.
Yes.
That's Rakim. I know you got soul. He says, that's why I came to teach those who can't say my name. That is such a hardcore line.
Damn, boy. But that brings an end to our show. There's one more track that you're going to play for us. A beautiful ending.
I think this was a really good ending, but...
It isn't. It isn't. I want to hear your track.
If people can guess what track it is, they win a cookie. Maurice, write down the names of the people who want the cookie.
gluten-free.
Yeah, we only have one box of cookies though, so please no more than 10 answers or responses.
Easy, guys. Oh. Thank you. Thank you, Frank, for the beautiful distortion history lesson right here.
See you next year. And remember, we know till what time your bed partner sleeps.
It's true. Enjoy your cookie.